Meanwhile, President Biden addressing the nation last night in his first State of the Union address, blaming American companies for skyrocketing inflation, not his own failed policies. Watch.
The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4.
Joining me right now is former Bridgewater Associate CEO and Pennsylvania Senate candidate David McCormick. David, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much. Well, it is on. We are entering the March primary season. A big moment for you. Your reaction to Joe Biden's speech last night.
Well, good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me. I think it was a case of him doubling down on a set of failed policies. When you think about leadership and the need to acknowledge reality and present solutions for dealing with it, he didn't talk in any way about the border. He didn't talk about meaningful solutions to the inflation challenge. He didn't talk about the terrible energy policy that not only has driven up a significant rise in fuel prices for Americans, but also was one of the contributors to the crisis in Ukraine. So I think it was an example of him doubling down on a failed agenda and not really acknowledging what all Americans know, which is the country's going in a really terrible direction, and we need to course correct. And sadly, the president didn't take leadership on that.
So, David, Pennsylvania is an oil state. I want to get your take on the solutions here. Oil prices are hitting multi-year highs, and that's one of the underlying problems for inflation. Brent oil and crude oil this morning well over $100 a barrel, with Brent now at $111 and crude at $109. You've been calling out Biden's anti-American energy policies that have emboldened Putin. Tell us what you'd like to see in Pennsylvania, where your constituents are hoping for jobs related to the energy space.
Well, yeah, you said it well. I mean, I think the combination of the debacle in Afghanistan and really such a chaotic and incompetent withdrawal with no accountability. Well, sadly, we lost 13 soldiers as a consequence of that, plus the energy policy, which essentially in 1 year, sort of hard to believe in retrospect, in 1 year took us from being an energy exporter to an energy importer, and took us off the path of energy dominance that America was on and Pennsylvania was on. And it's had a real impact on energy workers here. The regulatory blanket and the uncertainty has stopped capital investment. And so what we need to do, both as a matter of economic renewal, but also as a matter of national security, we need to really unlock our energy sector. We need to streamline the pipeline permitting process, which is one of the big constraints in Pennsylvania. We need to approve the development of an LNG port in Philadelphia. We need to pull back on the regulatory blanket, as I said, that's been put in place across our energy sector. And that would be a huge boom for our economy and a huge boom for Pennsylvania. And this is something we see over and over again. And the idea, as you just mentioned in your earlier segment, that the inflation is driven by the behavior of companies, as opposed to acknowledging that the overspending, the fiscal surge that came under the Biden administration, combined with, a decade of monetary policy that was too easy, plus energy policy that really drove up the cost of fuel, which is embedded in most goods and services. That's the cause of inflation, and we need to reverse those policies to address it.
Yeah, but David, we're not doing any of that. Let's face it, we are actually increasing our imports from Russia, making the United States that much more reliant on Russia during a war in Ukraine. We also have Russia as the negotiator, the mediator on behalf of the United States on Biden's plans to get back into the Iran deal. I think it was really, what are you going to do should you get this seat? You are competing against Dr. Oz Oz, who is a familiar name to many of us. What do you want to say about your campaign and what you're going to be able to do to move the needle on these issues should you win it?
Well, there's three kitchen table issues that I hear about over and over again when I'm driving across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The first is inflation, which we just talked about, and that is a really devastating for our economy, but is particularly problematic for working families who are living month to month and week to week on their paychecks with prices rising faster than wages. The second is energy. Energy will unlock the Pennsylvania economy and unlock the national economy. If Pennsylvania were a country, we'd be the fourth largest natural gas reserves in the world. It's untapped potential that has huge benefits, and it's clean. It's the cleanest natural gas in the world. Ironically, Biden's policies have been terrible for the environment because they've really curtailed the development of our natural resources here in the United States. And finally, the border. The border is a huge part of what Pennsylvanians are most worried about. The fentanyl rise in Pennsylvania is hurting our communities. We're disaffected by it in very significant ways. And it's also adding to the crime. The one thing Biden did flip his position on was the fact that he said we should fund the police, where the Democratic tagline has been we should defund the police. And that's in direct response to the fact that crime is on the rise. And it's a huge issue in Pennsylvania. It's a huge issue in Philadelphia and the suburbs, and it has to be addressed. And President Biden, I think, acknowledged that. That's part of what he's seeing in the risk in 2022.
Probably a result of his plummeting ratings, because the polls have plummeted because people are worried about crime. Look, I thought it was really striking that he was pushing back so much on Vladimir Putin, but no pushback on China. They just canceled the China initiative where we were investigating all the intellectual property theft. And now we know that a U.S. delegation is visiting Taiwan in a show of support as fears mount of a possible Chinese invasion into Taiwan. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is there now. He is arriving in Taiwan. They gave him an incredibly warm welcome by putting his picture up on billboards. Biden made little mention of China in his address last night, said nothing about investigating the origins of COVID-19.
Well, we have to hold China to account. We have to have a whole of nation strategy for dealing with it. We have to decouple in key areas like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. We have to hold them accountable for COVID, for the fentanyl surge in our country. We have to continue the policies that President Trump put in place, America First trade policies. President Trump did a great job of identifying this threat and beginning to reorient the country towards it. And we have to make sure we're not investing in China in ways that are going to help the military modernization of the PLA. And the case I'm making to the people of Pennsylvania is as a combat veteran, someone who served in the military, someone who served at the highest levels of business and government. I will be the right person to go toe-to-toe with the Chinese. I've done it in the past, and I'll do it again as a senator from Pennsylvania. And this is a fight where we don't have time for on-the-job training. We need people who understand the military, understand the threat, and can go toe-to-toe. Mike Pompeo, who you just mentioned, was my West Point colleague and just recently endorsed me. And I share his concerns, and I share his strong view on the need to go head-to-head with China and really redefine that relationship. That's our adversary. Russia, what's happening with Russia is a terrible challenge to the Ukrainians. It's something we need to support and show strength. But the real threat to our country is China, and we need to handle it well.
All the reasons for your tagline, battle tested. David McCormick, thanks very much for being here this morning. We so appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.